Welcome back to the Optimized Equine Podcast. It's so good to be back with you after a little spring break. I hope you and your horses are enjoying the season. There's been a lot of exciting things happening behind the scenes, but I'm thrilled to be back on the podcast and looking forward to the conversations we have lined up as we head into the summer. This episode is a bit of a deep dive into how my understanding of horsemanship has evolved over the years. That evolution goes far beyond just training techniques. It's been a shift in philosophies and principles that now shape not only my riding and training, but also my entire approach to equine handling, husbandry, and, let's be honest, life in general. When I look back at the old me, I see someone who is deeply committed and always trying hard, but often leaning on techniques or mindsets that, in hindsight, didn't align with the kind of relationship I truly wanted with and for my horses. So in this episode, I want to take you through some of those big shifts. I'll share what I used to believe, what changed, and what I've learned along the way. Sometimes the hard way. I hope you enjoy the show. Not to back up too far, but I did hunter jumpers for a long, long time, and that was kind of where I began my professional career, and it's gone a lot of different unexpected places. There was not a moment that I decided to transition away from hunter jumpers. I was in hunter jumpers and thought that I was taking the next step to get further into hunter jumpers. And that was buying my young horse, Barnaby. I worked at the barn where he was born. It was a breeding place as well as a show training barn. Every year, babies would be born, and I was the assistant trainer, and I would constantly be asked when I was getting one, and it was like, no, never. I'm good. Not that and the reason why was because I had so many client horses to do stuff with. Like, why would I don't need to buy my own and spend the money and take the risk myself. I have all these lovely horses here. I'm getting paid to do it. There's just no reason to change that, it felt like at the time. But then Barnaby was born, and apparently I have a thing for horses that look like Black Beauty or something. I don't know, but he was black, and he had 4 socks and a star, and I just pretty much, as soon as he was born, just instantly bought him, and that was that. Again, buying him, I didn't know I was making any big change or decision. I just thought, I'm buying this fancy horse. How cool. I'll get to have one of my own, and I wanted to do hunter derbies. So I went along with him, and I decided I wanted to learn how to start him under saddle myself. That isn't normally what was done with baby horses there. Normally they would get, sent off to a cowboy colt starter, it would be called, or, go get off to get saddle broke, and then they would come back and we would take it from there. But I knew I didn't want to do that because a lot of times they would come back, they just kind of looked skinny and sad, honestly. I know that the cowboys, they're working them every day because they're trying to get a lot done in a short amount of time, but the horses are tired, and that's part of why they are compliant. And then when they come home, we would have to start working with them, pretty quickly. And it was definitely, you felt when they came home like, oh, we better get to work. We don't want this horse to get untired. We want to keep this momentum and keep them working so that they're not wild and crazy baby horses like they can be. So when I was getting paid to do that, I didn't think a lot of it because that was just normal. Baby horses look like gangly baby horses, and they come and turn into beautiful horses. And I just didn't think any deeper into it until I had one, and then thought, I'm not sending my little schnookums here off to the cowboy. No, not going to happen. So I decided I wanted to learn how to do it myself. And that, again, wasn't a decision to leave hunter jumpers, but it is the decision that opened the floodgates for everything that happened after that. So as I started to learn techniques about training baby horses like this. That's where I got into what I would call horsemanship now, or what some people call horsemanship. It has a lot of different definitions, certainly. But I started with pretty traditional horsemanship, colt starting videos. I started learning and messing with that. And it's really different from what I'm doing now, but it was a whole other universe from what I was doing at that time as a traditional hunter jumper trainer. So as I started to learn, it started to become clear to me when I would try to practice these things I was learning with my young horse. He wasn't ready to be started under saddle yet, but I was still trying to do these new things like groundwork. We didn't do groundwork at all. So I was, practicing this stuff, and it would start to feel like I couldn't develop those things where I was because of how it was looked at, which, I could have just said, who cares, I'm doing my thing. But it was definitely not something that was understood or appreciated or supported in any way in that other environment. And I also started to realize I can't really keep doing this job the way I've been doing it now that I have started to learn. Well, I would say now that I've started to learn. Back then I would say, now that I've learned these new things, period, which is ridiculous, I can't keep doing it this old way. And so that is what prompted me to leave that barn that I worked for and go to basically open my own. That was another thing that when I worked there for years, I said, I'm never going to open my own place. No desire. Like, why would I want to take that on? I have the perfect life right now. Why would I want to take on that risk and responsibility and all of that stuff? But again, finally ran into that spot where it didn't feel possible, and it also did not feel possible at the time to go work for someone else. Because at the time I didn't see anything but just more hunter jumper people. Like, I didn't know who to go work for. I didn't know. I just was like, I guess I got to do my own thing. So that's what I did. And so I opened Oasis Equestrian, and that was in 2015. And I would have said at the time that I was a hunter jumper trainer. Still, that was my plan. But that I was going to do it differently, or I was going to do it the right way, So that is how it began. Initially, the things that were different were that, like I said, groundwork is just something that we didn't really do. So you do lunge horses, but it's kind of like you have them run around in a circle to get them tired, basically. There's not a lot of discussion or thought about the horse's mental processes. In the very beginning, it was at least trying to create something from the ground and teach your horse some things before you just crawl on and make it happen. In hunter jumpers, there was not a lot of preparation off the horse, and you get on the horse and you kind of make stuff happen because they are pretty compliant. And in this other way, I felt like there was more preparation from the ground and a little bit more emphasis on like getting the horse to truly understand what you want of their body rather than just pushing and shoving it around. If I try to put myself in the shoes of my hunter jumper trainer self before I found any of this stuff, I most definitely would have said I am thinking about what my horse feels or how my horse is thinking. From my perspective now, it does not seem that way at all, which is what makes being involved in and watching certain things about hunter jumpers, and this is not just about hunter jumpers, this is like true of a lot of disciplines, it makes it hard to watch people do things and say things that just don't make sense to your current understanding. It's really hard to think of what I was thinking or not thinking back then, because it makes no sense now. Like, here's an example of something that I don't know why for years this made sense and why this was taught. Let's say your horse is scared of something in the corner of the arena, or there's like a new big scary statue like right outside the corner of the arena. Your horse doesn't want to go over there. Well, old school thinking would push that horse over there, whether it was with the use of my legs or spurs, or you'd have a little crop and you would tap them on the butt until they would go to it. And you basically are constantly creating these situations where the horse chooses the lesser of two evils. That's how it feels now. At the time, you don't see it that way. At the time, I would have said, I am encouraging that horse to go closer. I am pressuring him. As soon as he gives me the right answer, I take the pressure away. What's so wrong in that? But it seems so clear now to say, the horse already doesn't want to go there, and now I am adding pressure or discomfort. Some are going to say I'm adding pain, or whatever you want to call it. You're adding something negative and making the horse choose to do it one way or the other. Now, some people do that much more tactfully than others, and we would call that pressure and release, basic pressure release training. There's nothing wrong with pressure and release training. But my old self, that's all you do. It's just pressure, pressure, pressure. Push them where they don't want to go and then move on. Push them where they don't want to go and move on. Push them over the jump. Let's say they're scared of a jump. A horse, you put a new weird-looking flower box down, and the horse is scared of it, and let's say they try to stop in front of the jump instead of go over it. Old school me is going to pressure that horse with spurs or a crop and make them think that you're better off just to leap over the thing, because if you don't, I'm going to keep, every time you come up to the jump and stop, I'm going to smack you on the butt. That would be totally normal. It now, I think, creates horses that might jump over a thing, but they don't like their job. They don't like what they're doing. They are traveling with tension because they're getting smacked around and pulled around with the bridle and all this stuff. All these things that people do to get the job done start to be necessary because the horse wasn't ever in it in the first place mentally. They were kind of always just being pushed around, shoved around, go here or else, basically, is like the theme of their lives. So, horses are smart. You don't have to do that long before they quit resisting you, but it doesn't mean they like their job. And so because they're not that into it and they're not that invested, they'll be lazy. They'll be, in that world, we would say they're behind your leg. You have to push them along every stride, even though they're not being disobedient. They're not in it. They're not like doing it with you. People would say because the horse isn't bucking or the horse isn't making me, force it around, that it's willing. Back then I would have agreed, but now I don't. They do a lot of things that they're not really, I guess they are willing because they're doing it, but they're not invested. So when I'm working with a horse now, let's use that same example. Let's say there's a scary jump and I want this horse to go jump over it. And let's say this is a totally new horse to me, so we don't have any of that basis of relationship and how I would generally build a horse up to not have that need to stop in the first place, but that's another conversation. Let's just say it's a new horse to me and I've decided I want to try to jump over this thing. So ideally, if I'm going to choose to go to a jump, I am already going to be moving in harmony with this horse, meaning it is taking my suggestions very easily. I don't have to constantly add more and more pressure or motivation to do what we're doing. So Let's say we already have that. Now we are moving in harmony towards this jump, which means I'm not having to push it just to get around the turn. So now if, let's say I turn the corner and pointed at the jump, maybe we're 5 strides out and I feel that horse suck back a little bit. If I add leg and it just happens, great. But if I add leg and feel like it doesn't immediately solve my problem, I'm now going to go, okay, we've got a problem. Let's stop and address this problem. In a horse I have a relationship with, I can address that problem in motion. We don't have to stop. I can use my aids to help them feel more confident or relaxed or whatever, and we can hopefully just keep going. But if they don't work the first time, I'm pretty much going to bring them back to a stop and figure out what that horse needs to feel comfortable about that jump. Maybe it turns out it isn't really about the jump. Maybe there's some peacock outside the arena. I've had this happen. A peacock outside the arena that he saw in the distance, you know. So I'm going to then, rather than just push on him and make him go over the jump or whatever it is I was asking for, I'm going to figure out really what the problem is and then solve it very specifically. Solve it is just going to mean make the horse feel comfortable again, so that they can go back to being in harmony with me, so that when I just look up and go, we're cantering to this jump, it goes okay and just does it. So it's going to look different depending on the horse. How do I get that horse to get back to where they feel like they can follow me in harmony again? Don't know. Could vary. Some horses just need you to let them stop and look at the thing, and then the next time they would approach it, it wouldn't be a problem. And others need something more specific. Maybe I would get off the horse and use groundwork to have the horse do it without me up there. There's endless things that I might try depending on what the horse tells me would be helpful. Someone might disagree with that approach if they have never been exposed to a different way of training. There's learning theory is a whole thing, and it was not something I knew anything about in hunter jumper land. I thought that I knew how horses learned because I had evidence that I did. But I learned a lot more later. Somebody might disagree in that they would say I am teaching the horse, we could be blunt and say, I am teaching that horse to be a chicken shit by letting it stop and investigate. But I would also say these are the same people that are going to look down upon someone for crying, perhaps. So it's just different ways of being and living. And some people believe that an obedient animal that goes over what you pointed at is created by making it happen consistently. And they're not wrong. You will create an obedient animal, usually, unless you come across that special challenging horse. You will create an obedient animal that will do that. That person, in my opinion, is not aware of the spark and joy and way of going that's available in the horse that's beyond just obedience. So when they watch me, if they were to watch me deal with a horse that was having a scary problem, spooky thing, whatever it may be, it would look like coddling to them. It would look like it's taking too long. No one has time for that. Blah, blah, blah. There's, that kind of narrative is generally what would be thought of. I like doing that way because I just like it now. But I also know the results that come later. It's worth every extra second it might take. Discipline and compassion most definitely can coexist, and also so can obedience. I think obedience can be a good thing, and certainly there are different ways to define and interpret that word. But I do think obedience, if we're looking at a pie chart, I think obedience is a thing we should have. it's no different than a child. If I like scream that there is a car coming and you must stop, like I need that to be a button that works. If that is how you do every single thing and it's all about obedience, that's where you get in trouble. So, as I think pairing it with compassion and empathy and thinking about how your horse feels and is thinking and learning, you can be obedient and all those things. You just have to find the right balance of having that compassion in there as well. I can't expect, and I have come to terms with this, at least for now. I can't expect everyone to want the same thing. I am not interested in the result that they are after. I see plenty of horses get ribbons and awards and all these things, and it happens in a way, either I didn't actually like the performance, or more often, the performance was fine, but the way they got there was disgusting. Do I think it's possible to get the same performance? I'm going to say I think it's possible to get better performance. It's not the same, because when I watch those horses that a traditional person that's going to take the young horse and shove them around and have them showing at 4 years old all over the place. There's nothing wrong with showing at 4 years old, by the way, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. So someone who is comfortable with just pushing a horse around, getting it done, going to the shows, winning the awards, moving them up to the next division, winning more awards, all that stuff. A lot of times those horses, to a regular eye, look very fancy. To me, they look... I can see the beginnings of some of their challenges physically, for example, and mentally. So I don't know that I am ever going to create the identical result, because I am not trying to. The current result that person is looking for is a horse that is obedient and compliant, and they are, in hunters anyway, they're slow, and jumpers they're fast. But there's certain pieces that those people just aren't looking at. One of them, I would say, if we want to just look at like a big one, it would be a versatile horse. So a lot of times these, a hunter horse, we're using that example right now, they're trained to be obedient, but they are not necessarily in it. They just kind of go do the thing. That horse maybe can't do other jobs very easily. It's like they can only do the hunter job. I'm not saying that the same horse is going to go be super successful in the hunters and the jumpers and in barrel racing. I'm not saying that. But if you can't attempt anything but going around on a track like a little robot, what is that? That's not even a horse. That's just a horse doing a party trick. He's not invested. He's not in it. So one of the disciplines I want to do, in addition to the hunters now, is called working equitation. And what I love so much about that is it is it's very versatile. You are showing that a horse can do a dressage test. You are showing that they can do what they call ease of handling, which is like basically the same as hunters. It's judging the style, but it's not over jumps. It's over a lot of different obstacles. We'll just leave it at that for now. A lot of fun, different obstacles. And then there's also a speed round where you're doing those same obstacles, and it is a timed speed thing. If a horse is enjoying working with a human and they're not just doing a party trick and being a robot and going around and counting their 8 jumps, which is a thing. When I did hunters, my junior hunter, we always would have almost always 8 jumps and then what they call a courtesy circle. That horse would count. And if you added anything extra, if something was not your normal hunter course, good luck to you. That horse was going to gallop off and have an opinion about it. It was not cute. And that's sad, I want a horse to to just be doing what you're doing together, and they're comfortable doing something else too. And that comes with that other style of connected training, and following each other's feel and that kind of thing, and not just being obedient only. An adaptable horse is mentally and physically healthy. If they're not adaptable, they either don't really understand their job, or there are mental or physical things getting in your way that were probably put in there because they didn't understand their job. And some people would not like that word being used. People more on the equine welfare side of things, let's say. That's the weird thing about where I am in my life, career, whatever, is there's some people that are so deep into this harmony and equine welfare side of things that I care so much about, but there's some that think that the answer to that is doing nothing with a horse and just having them in turnout with other horses. And I don't believe in that either, really. I'm not saying I don't believe in horses just being out with other horses. That's totally fine. But do I think that is the expression of their absolute best self? No, I don't. I'm not saying you can't force a horse into doing something they don't want to do. You 100% can. And you can 100% play mental games to teach them to do what you want. But it takes a little more force and a little more physical pressure, I would say, or intimidation. We'll say that mental intimidation. Also, it takes that but it looks different. Maybe not everybody would see that. To me, it is clear when a horse is doing a job and they're not joyful about it, they move in a muted way. That's probably the best way to put it for now. But that's something I wouldn't have been able to really see the same way 10 years ago. When I'm riding a horse and I want to create, I always want to create that harmonious, light feeling, like we're just feeling each other and going together. The same way that two dancers look when they're just really flowing together. That's what I want it to look and feel like. There's definitely much more to it than just what happens before I get on. It's 100% about that horse's whole life and about mine too. I've learned that as well. But what I mean by that is, I could have the most mindful, thoughtful tacking up or whatever technique I want to use to get the horse ready. Well, it doesn't matter if that horse is feeling anxious for half of its day because of X, Y, and Z. I don't know. The neighbor likes to do target practice or something. I don't know. There's so many factors that I believe you have to consider, you should consider, that add up to that. And so it's really looking at the horse's whole life, like they're 24 hours every day, 365, are they happy in their living situation? Sometimes you don't know until you change something or try something new. I think I absolutely would have said my horses were happy before. Looking back on it now, they were nice to me. They were fine the way they were, but I can now see how their bodies paid a price for the way that I used to keep horses. And what I mean by that is in stalls. I kept horses in stalls a majority of the time. I always knew turnout was important, but it was like, oh, they get turnout every day for like an hour. Like that doesn't cut it, in my opinion. And that does add up to how you create that horse, because to tie it all together, let's say a horse is in a stall most of the day. They come out, let's say this horse gets all the good things. So let's say it has 2 hours of turnout and a 1 hour ride every day, which, by the way, most horses don't get that much. How many hours is that in a stall? Even if you have a big stall, that's a lot of hours for a big animal to not be out walking, and they are designed to walk pretty much all day. So even the sweetest, kindest, well-trained horse, if his body is stiff after being in a stall for that much of its time over, let's say it's 8 years old, that's a young horse still, but think about it, that's a lot of hours in a stall compared to how many hours it was out moving. Well, it's going to start to get stiff or sore, or there's just a million different things that can start to be, and it's very, very small, but it's the kind of stuff that prevents you from having that, let's just go over here and flow right over there. Well, they can't physically. And then maybe they start to have a mental resistance to the whole thing, because ever since it was 8 years old, let's say now that 8-year-old is now 15. Well, for the last 7 years, it came out feeling stiff, didn't get an appropriate warm-up, went and got pushed to do the job, and it did it because it's nice. And now it has, now it's even more lame. Now it needs corrective shoes. Now it needs a daily anti-inflammatory. I'm not saying you can't train this horse to be connected and follow light aids, but you're already at a place where it's going to be hard because the body is giving you challenges that built up. I mean, they build up so slow. It's like a grain of sand a day for 8 years, and then, or 15 years or whatever, it's very slow, but it's the stuff that makes a difference. It's hard for me to understand why someone would disagree. Some people just don't know horses any other way. I know I was one. So before I prioritized the kind of outdoor living that I do now, I was used to seeing horses being kind of stiff or need a good long warm-up or be what would be called cold-backed, meaning basically their back hurts until they get a thorough warm-up. That is really common, and it's not that some people are terrible and not observant and they don't take care of their horses enough. Others are very observant, and they would say, like, oh, they're on it. Like, I will get him a body worker, and I will get that. He is now on his daily medication. Well, it's addressed, but in my opinion, I know I did not realize that I could solve so many of those problems by just having horses out moving almost all the time. It solves so many problems. They disagree because they haven't seen it done and because it is very challenging. Having horses live out the way that I have them live, it is not easy to line that up with the way that a traditional show barn operates. So yeah, you do have to do things a little bit different. It's totally possible, but it is definitely different, and it doesn't necessarily feel possible when you are in that position. And you're just used to seeing it, so you just don't think that deep into it. Why would you? It's normal that a horse has to retire at a certain age in many industries. That's normal, and you don't think about it. If we're just talking like in general for hunter jumpers or most competition type disciplines, things they would say about turnout are the horses can't go out together. They will fight. They will hurt each other. They're too expensive to let that happen. I would say they're too expensive to let rot in a stall. That's what I would say now. Yeah, you're right. They are expensive, and it does add up to make them do that. So, there are people that would say, oh, if I put my horse out in the pasture, they just run back and forth at the gate and they're having a terrible time. That is true. That is a horse that has now developed neurotic tendencies and it needs help. Can that horse learn how to be normal in turnout? Yes. And that's the same answer I would give for someone who's worried about horses getting injuries. It is very common knowledge in horse world that horses will injure themselves no matter what. You don't, taking that away is not worth the all the downsides that stack up over time. To avoid a few injuries, you can teach horses how to be together. There are ways to introduce them and have them learn to be what I would consider normal horses in turnout, that are just enjoying their time outside and not ripping around being crazy. They're literally just walking around all day long, most of the time. And I hesitate a little bit to say that any horse can learn to do that, but I've definitely taught some neurotic horses to do that. I do think it's important that horses practice being in stalls so that they're not stressed and traumatized when they do need one. Even if you are a complete naturalist and believe in your horse just living in a field only, I still think it's important, because we live in a modern world, that they learn how to be comfortable in a stall, so that if they are injured, or there's all kinds of scenarios where you may have to stick your horse in a stall. So you want to make that not be a traumatic experience. So if you take the time to think about what they're thinking and how they feel and how they're learning and what they need, from there, everything kind of takes care of itself, as long as you take the time to do that. I think when you get around the wrong people, it's really easy to feel like your schedule is what matters most, or whatever it is, whatever thing is making it hard to put your horse's needs first. I feel like a lot of times, if you zoom out and really think about it, you can put your horse's needs first. You might be disappointing someone else. That's a different thing. You got to go to a therapist for that one. I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit tamaraleebarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.